Okay, this is 91.5 FM KKUP Cupertino.
Hello.
The program is Embracing Mother Earth. And something wonderful happens weekly, and it's not in the news. It's on Embracing Mother Earth, a talk radio show that uplifts consciousness and allows all essences of truth to be freely expressed. I'm Kaz Powers.
And I'm Paula Noon.
And today we have another incredible guest. Paula, tell us about it.
It's very special because Michael was born in Ireland, so Michael Tsarion is our guest, and we invited him on because it's St. Patrick's Day today, and we thought he'd be an excellent guest to talk about St. Patrick's Day and other things. He's an expert on the occult histories of Ireland and America, and has made the deepest researches into the comparative mythologies of the world and into his own country's ancient and mysterious Celtic tradition. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Taz. Hi, Paula. How you doing?
Oh, we're doing great, and we're even doing better because you're with us.
Thank you, love. It's nice to be back. It's wonderful to be on your show.
Oh, and we thank you for taking the time to be on our show because we know you're a very busy person.
Indeed, but it's always a pleasure to, get a chance to share my ideas.
And you have a new book out. I don't know how new it is, but it's Atlantis.
Yeah, Atlantis is recently out, and Atlantis Alien Visitation and Genetic Manipulation.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about that later in the interview. But where did some of the mythology come in Ireland around St. Patrick's Day, or is that strictly religious?
Yeah, it is. Obviously, because it is a Christian religion, the whole concept of St. Patrick coming there in the 5th century, in order to make that religion work, just like the Christians did all over the world, they co-opted a lot of pagan motifs, because, of course, this was resisted very strongly in the beginning. So if people have done their homework, they'll find out that Christianity is a pagan religion, in many senses. I mean, especially there's been research done on that from the feminist point of view about how many of the rites and rituals of Christianity are basically old matrilineal and matrifocal in origin. And the same was true of the Celtic tradition. So in order to co-opt, in order to get people to believe in some of these new religions, a certain amount of familiar motifs, were brought in. And that very much shows if you go into detail. But yeah, it was about the 5th century. And
is the date come from the Celtic tradition? Actually, the March 17th.
That I don't know about the specifics, but that I know that he was born. See, St. Patrick actually was. His family were quite noble. They were actually high ups. His father, especially, was like a Roman British general. Had a lot of power, as a matter of fact, in Europe. And when St. Patrick died, of course, he died in Northern Ireland. I've been both to his grave in this very beautiful town in Northern Ireland where he's meant to be buried, and also to the famous mountain of Patrick, which is very, very famous throughout the world, is the mountain that he went up and to ring this bell. And then when he came down, he said that he had cast all the snakes out of Ireland,
Mm-hmm.
These places. There's certain places that are identified with him more than others, But his parents were, a lot of people don't realize that he was actually, they had a lot of power and they were influential. This is prior to the time that he was said to be kidnapped, The old story goes about how he was kidnapped from shores of England by Irish marauders and then taken to Northern Ireland, One isn't really sure whether that's true or not.
Well, he, like most saints, he was made a saint after he had died.
Exactly, yeah. It's the same old story, it's like later on. And of course, most of the deeds that are associated with him are so unbelievably, trumped up, and it's like a mythology in itself, And, they even say that, even though he lived in the 5th century, they claim that, St. Patrick, one of the myths says that St. Patrick actually met Jesus, and Jesus had given him this famous staff, So down through the centuries, they had to get rid of all of these preposterous stories. And of course now, even though it's great fun and everything, in one sense, from a spiritual point of view, I know we will understand this more, the whole idea of even St. Patrick's Day becoming a very commercialized thing, because remember, it's not celebrated in all of Ireland for a start. There are certain parts of Ireland, where it's not a big festival. It's certainly not a big thing like it has become here. And also now there's so much, just rampant commercialism associated with that day that I don't even see, even from a Christian point of view, where a lot of the spirituality is involved in it. Even if you're a Christian, at least, that's fine. But, where's the Christian component in it? And it's almost like, again, it's another way of it's like a caricature. It's become like a caricature of the Irish. And it's this day when everybody's meant to, celebrate Ireland and love what it is to be Irish. And yet, when you look around, you just see nothing. It's almost like it's become like Christmas, a very commercialized thing. And where is the true spirit, of Ireland? It's sort of missing in many ways.
Well, you've given me a new sight on it. I thought all of Ireland celebrated it as we do here.
No, you see, in the north of Ireland, because of the religious divide, it's not. And see, don't forget also.
Oh, right. Correct, yeah.
Yeah, just the very fact that you have the conflict between the Catholics and the Protestants. The Protestants will sort of celebrate it slightly less emphatically, just because of the fact that, he was a Catholic. He represented Roman Catholicism and so on. Although a lot of Protestants do, in fact, honor the day. But the most important thing is, of course, that there's a world of difference. And when I say this, I know that your listeners will immediately grasp this. There is, in fact, a world of difference between what we would call Celtic and what we would call St. Patrick. The very fact that St. Patrick was, in fact, a patron saint, in the sense of Christianity, that already is a world of difference between the Celtic tradition. I mean, no two things could be further apart in one sense. So, again, we have, there's these two islands here that, what we're talking about was happening in the 5th century, and as very highlighted as that part of history is, and as I said, a lot of the stories were also very miraculous. When we talk about Celtic Ireland and the Celtic spirit, the Druidic tradition, we are talking about thousands of years, prior even to that point. So, again, the two don't necessarily go together, and many hardliner Celtic types, who are very much into the Celtic tradition, would lament it, because the coming of St. Patrick meant disaster for, the Celtic spirit of Ireland,
The Celtics were thought of as pagans, but as you said, Catholics actually have a lot of the pagan traditions.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think that was, a lot of people say that was just accident, and that they were co-opting certain things to get people to believe, but that's not true. If you do your homework, and as you know, and look into it closely, you'll find that so many of the rites and rituals of Christianity were co-opted from old the feminine cults, especially the matriarchies of old, and many of the actual pagan religions of old as well.
Well, you're going to be speaking at the Con conference coming up, and you're going to be talking about how religion has been used, actually, to create conflict.
Yeah, I do a lot of different talks in different places. What we'll be doing at Conspiracy Con, last time I talked strictly on my Atlantis work, but that work involves very much to do with how human beings are controlled on this planet. And whether we like it or not, there's a dualistic way that's done. Obviously, we're controlled through political means. We're also controlled through religious means. And, politics is there to help us become more liberated socially and free, and unfortunately, it seems to do the opposite. And religion, which is meant to be there ostensibly to spiritualize us and help us to gain enlightenment and spiritual empowerment, seems also to do the opposite. So the talk that I'll be doing at Conspiracy Con is actually on the origin of evil. Because since a very young child in Ireland, I mean, you can't grow up in Belfast. It's one of the absolutely most war-torn places on the earth, and it's for such a small city, and the north of Ireland for such a small location. It's so drenched in injustice and criminality and persecution that one can't not question this concept of evil, So at least I did from a very young age get very interested in what is this, phenomena.
Oh, yeah. If you were raised there, wonder why does it keep going?
Yeah.
For centuries.
And what brings it about, So I've gone off and studied that very deeply and found out, of course, as the My Atlantis book shows, that the concept of evil or the injustice that human beings have, this penchant for criminality and cruelty and injustice that we have, it really needs to be addressed now. We've moved into the 21st century, and the 21st century is really a countdown to finding out so many hidden things about the nature of the human being, the nature of our planet.
I think everything's starting to come to the surface.
Isn't it? Yeah, I really believe that. I think that so many people also got frustrated in the previous centuries, and especially in the New Age movement, because there was so much conditioning and so many lies. And what I tell them, both from an astrologer's point of view and also just a scholar's point of view, don't fret, don't worry, don't be pessimistic, because you see, the celestial clock was not with us in the previous centuries. Even in the 20th century, it really wasn't the time for the answers to certain meta themes. It just wasn't the time. So when it's not the time for certain things, then things are in the dark on purpose. You don't get the true story. But the 21st century is actually is the century for solution think. And some of these age-old questions, like the problem of evil, the problem of our origins, where did we really come from, the question of ancient civilizations, the question of what is our fate, and also the question of the secret societies, who really controls the governments and religions of the world. All of these important questions, which are really central to our lives. It's in the 21st century now that they're going to start to be discovered, and we've already just moved into this, millennium, and we're already starting to see that. As you say, the masks are starting to come down. And this is the age of these kinds of revelations. Now, having those revelations is going to change the status quo enormously. We've already seen in the political world, especially in America, so much change just in the last couple of years that, would have been thought impossible beforehand, So radical change can take place very, very quickly now in the countdown to 2012. And in my talk, I'll be going into that, but focusing a lot on this question of evil, because we have blamed Mother Nature for that. Whenever we wanted to know about the coming of evil into the world or into human consciousness, we have been told by religion and even by science, that it's a blunder, it's the fault of Mother Nature. But, obviously that doesn't hold any water whatsoever, because nature, as we know it, is in perfect harmony, it's in perfect balance, from the largest neutron star to the smallest quantum particle. So how then, could nature blunder, so to speak, in its highest species, human being, and make a capacity in human beings so deadly, so lethal, that it would undermine her own order?
Now, Michael, you do astrology as well. Is there any particular upcoming time within this next year that you see some real big changes?
I do. I also have my own system of astrology, but I also keep focused on even the Western system, because again, we need to be aware of all the different kinds of systems that are out there. But even in my own system of astrology, I do see radical changes coming about, especially in the between the summer solstice and the fall equinox. There can be some very interesting changes, and we know that Western astrologers will agree that there's going to be lots of shake-up socially, because the planet Uranus is now presently moving through the sign of Pisces. So in my work, I talk a lot about that as well, that there's both a dark side and a positive side to that. The positive side of Uranian energy is, of course, the spirit of rebellion. That one of the things that's going to happen is that people are really in the world not going to be taking a lot of the oppression and a lot of the degradation and the injustice that they've been, used to in the past. There's going to be a lot of feeling of wanting to strike back.
Now, in the United States, do you see a definite division between those who want peace and those that are behind the government? I mean, it's almost as though a lot of people are being pushed, not pushed, but are going back towards religion, that
right.
Christian. So that's those type of people are on one side, and then the people that want peace, there's like a definite division.
Exactly, and you're so right. But again, it's the old trauma coming from even Y2K It's the trauma coming across the into the new millennium. This has also been very sort of subconsciously frightening for a lot of people who are not rooted in their center and who haven't done a lot of their spiritual homework. And of course, now that we do have Uranus in Pisces and we have Pluto going through Sagittarius, there's going to be a lot of subconscious toxicity in people. Now, the Maya calendar speaks about this very deeply. They talked about the age from 1996 to 2012 as the age of revealing. And of course, what you say ties into this, because the more or the less work that people do spiritually, and the more immoral they are, and the more toxic that they are emotionally and spiritually, and the more disconnected from source that they are, which of course accounts for most of the people in the world right now, unfortunately, what happens is then the less order that you have inside, the more order that you allow to be imposed socially. So we turn to the world leaders for structure, because that's Big Daddy, isn't it? It's the oldest game in the book, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the old idea of the tyranny. You know, you don't have any order or structure inside, but don't worry, we'll provide that with our new world order, you know, concept outside of you. And that's what we're seeing today with people who even really know better, but they can't resist it, because you see, inside of themselves there's tremendous psychic fear. They're not rooted in something deeper than the persona and the personality. So then they rally round the All-Father, and the All-Father is also just nothing but a rescription of the old Jehovah lie, right, which served us for, you know, how many hundreds, even thousands of years. So this is why this is making a comeback. I do not believe, you asked me, do I see stuff in the future? I believe this is about a 2.5-year phenomena, and then people are going to start dropping away again. It's been, the Christian thing in the evangelical sense in America has sort of been sort of on the back burner for about 20, 30 years, you know, while we had the hippie era of the 60s and we had the decadence of the 70s, we had the technology of the 80s. Now it's making a comeback, but don't worry, people should not be sort of, you know, frightened or threatened by that, because it's only a passing thing. It's only for these individuals who have not done a lot of spiritual homework and have been cutting a lot of corners. But even those individuals, they will rally quickly to the call of the Father, but ultimately inside of themselves, they know that even alone doesn't cut it. This new century is just not going to allow them to live that lie. And they're going to realize that even that is not cutting it. So there will be, after about 2.5 years, in about 2007, another falling away from that. So there's a large commitment to it now.
So is that meaning that people will stand up and think for themselves a little bit more after the next 2.5 years? Yeah.
What we're talking about, of course, is always the mass, you know. Now, what you're talking about is the few. See, I always realize, I mean, it's almost like a given, that in any kind of society, it is only the few, really, who are always independent. You know, it's like, isn't that what makes something beautiful? Is the walled garden is more precious? The rarest orchid is rare because, you know, it's rare. So it's the same thing with human beings. Unfortunately, the world will never change because all of the people, you know, all wake up at the same time. That's just not going to happen, and we shouldn't look to that. It's not going to happen like that. It never has happened like that. What's going to happen is that individuals, and the Maya calendar is full of this, it's clearly saying that in the age of revealing or in the age of apocalypse, what will happen is against people's wishes, against their own conscious desire, there's going to be all that is toxic and all that is immoral going to be revealed. It's the age of revealing. That means, in practical senses, that the masks are going to come down. That means that the people that you sit beside at work, the people that you know, even some of your neighbors, certainly the people in government. I mean, we're already seeing it. But the Martha Stewart concept and the Michael Jackson and, the Bill O'Reillys and a little bit of revelation about the people in Enron, this is only, the beginning, the tip of the iceberg. But we are seeing this sort of revelation, and it's going to be affecting more public figures as this year goes on, just to let us know that it's going to start filtering down even into our life. And my message is to not be afraid of this, because this is the old protagonist-antagonist problem. That there are people who've suffered, who've done their spiritual homework and have been crucified for it. We all know people in our lives like this. We have done it ourselves, especially people in the spiritual movement, have been ridiculed by, people close to them. They've been dejected and made poor and lost jobs and what have you, right? So now is coming the age where those individuals who've really done their homework and stuck it out, who've not been narcissistic, who have not climbed at the expense of other people and have really believed, those individuals are now going to be called and shown their living destiny. And as a result of that, a lot of other people around them who've been pretending to be of the light, okay, are going to be exposed. And there's nothing wrong with that. The time has come, and what we must make sure that we do not do, and this is a very important message, is we must not, when we see this happening to other people around us, suddenly jump in front in the old, 19th century and the 20th century way of jump in and give our souls like a red carpet for these people who are falling. Unfortunately, you have to let them fall. Mother Nature is shaking the tree, and the rotten fruit are going to fall off. In the past, the altruistic martyr concept, was to give up your own sort of life and your own soul in your own way to save these individuals. That is not going to cut it this time. There's a whole different game in town right now, and it involves a different kind of spiritual dynamic, a little bit more severe.
Now,
but
Michael,
this is how the printing process works, unfortunately.
Your new book that you have out now what does this share? Does it share anything about what we're talking about right now?
Very much so. It goes into, it'll be different than what I'm doing at ConspiracyCon in the sense that I'm focusing more on the coming of evil, whereas the Atlantis book goes much more into the Celtic archives of ancient Atlantis and explains much of the disinformation that we have regarding Atlantis and Lemuria. I talk a lot in the book about the war between the forces of light and darkness, how women were disempowered, what we can do to heal the planet. There's a lot of solutions, scenarios in the last chapter of the book.
So all the things that we're going through now, is that the same sequence that Atlantis and Lemuria went through?
It's so similar because, you see, history repeats itself, as we know, and the lessons that we don't learn in one age, we invariably, incarnate again. And since we haven't really solved this problem of evil, my book talks about how the coming of evil is dated to Atlantis, that it was events that took place on Atlantis in which alien beings from other planets basically crossed their own DNA with the human DNA. This is what the theme of the book is. And this schism, this transgenic experimentation caused this, penchant for evil that we have. That's where I date it to. But yes, because we have not solved that problem, and because we've handed over the solution to religion and government and to science, and they have never answered it, again, we're going to find that we're stuck with it. And, we carry it into every generation. We dedicate that problem to our children if we don't come across the answer now. And a lot of people think, well, it's a non-issue because we know how evil came into the world. It was nature's blunder. But you see, to believe that is to be a serious folly, to be in serious error, because if we believe that nature could make such a blunder, then by definition, nature is flawed, nature is imperfect, and then aren't we then justified to treat nature and to treat animals and to treat indigenous peoples all over the world with contempt and to go and massacre and murder and do whatever we want? This is the very idea. But see, this idea was inimical to many of the high cultures of the world who realized, no, it is not nature, it's not because there's a glitch in nature's laws that bring evil into the world. It's constant tinkering with and violation of nature's laws that bring this stuff about.
And what advice would you give people right now to be able to live through all this chaos that's coming about?
Right. Well, remember the old Zen idea, the old Taoist idea, is that out of chaos comes something more perfect, something more real.
We evolve, yes.
Yes, I'm totally a big believer in that. Remember I told you, I've come out of Northern Ireland. I've basically had, 30 years of martial law and this whole Orwellian nightmare. I've seen it face to face. So unfortunately, because people in this country have avoided their psychological homework, it's the one area in which the Americans have been weak. That nature is now conspiring with fate to bring about certain amount of chaotic stuff because, as we have learned in Ireland, sometimes you need to kick up you-know-where in order to get your priorities back. And that's what I'm starting to see. I'm starting to see that it has it's taken 9/11 and it's taken these atrocious events for at least the American people to start getting back into finding out what is politics, who controls who, what is it that we really believe. And now if you go into the bookstores of America, you'll see on every bestseller table volumes and volumes and volumes on this subject. And I think that's wonderful. I think that's great. I'm very sad and unhappy that it took, devastating events to bring it about. But my goodness, even in my audiences, when I do talks now, and I'm sure you'll agree, it's so much easier to explain subjects like secret societies and, the coming of evil and all sorts of things to people now, post 9/11, than it was when you had to pretty much beat it into people before that.
Well, at least people are questioning now, was this or was this not what took place, and that kind of thing.
Right.
And it gives, the can of worms has been opened to
Absolutely.
To do some checking on.
And I'm fine with that. I don't care necessarily if the books are pro or con, I'm just happy that they're there. I'm happy that there's debate. I'm happy that the newspapers and magazines are covering it. I'm happy that we're finding out that the benefit of independent underground news sources. This is very, very healthy, and people in this country have been a little bit too apathetic too long. I mean, think about it. 200 years ago, your own forefathers in this country took on the might of the British Empire. The greatest tyrant that the world had ever known at that time was, King George III. And a few people here, no more than 3% of the American people in the War of Independence threw that tyrant back into the Atlantic Ocean where he belonged. And he had the might of the mercenaries of Europe on his side, trying to tell America what to do and that they're going to live under the servitude. And just 3% of the American people, went by their constitutional rights and said, no, we're going to resist you. And they threw this mighty tyrant into the ocean where he belonged. And, within 200 years later, people are apathetic. They don't even understand anymore what their own history is. They've been absorbing so many lies from orthodox media, you see. So unfortunately, we have to learn there's a certain rule in life. If people choose to live in ignorance like this, when there's really no reason to, nature will find a way to bring truth back in. And often that can be kind of traumatic. So what we're going through is this growth period that's very much shown in the astrology. It has a lot to do with the spirit of rebellion. It has to do with the fact that we're nearing the Aquarian age. It has to do with the fact that the Maya, from the Mayan calendar point of view, we're on a countdown. A 13-year countdown to the year 2012. And I'll be going into a lot of that in the talk that I do. I have 6 DVD documentaries coming out, and one of them is specifically on the Maya and their prophecies.
Well, at least, we have an area of years that you can see what has taken place, and maybe I think that's because of our media, because of our internet and everything else, people can be more awake as to what is really taking place. Where years ago there wasn't this gap, coverage available in such a short span of time. So we're really fortunate living in this time, and we can look at maybe what our children and grandchildren will be going, through, and to be able to maybe assist this a little more quickly than normal.
Right, time is speeding up. A lot of people say that they're talking about the speeding up of time. One can also look at it, not so much that time is speeding up, but that consciousness is slowing down. I think that what it basically boils down to is priorities. That, for a lot of time, there's been a lot of decadence. There's been a lot of, avoidance, especially of the psychological dimension. We've taken so much care of the material dimension in life and looked to that particular scenario that we've tended to avoid our psychological homework, and that will always have a major consequence. That will always have a major consequence for the negative. And we turn it around by doing our psychological homework, finding out who we are. You can't have order in the external world if you're in disorder within. I mean, that's the old shamanic tradition. That's the message of all true mystics in the world.
Well, so everybody's so busy.
Yeah.
I think that's probably, by the time they get home, they're exhausted, and to be able to, follow this path through, it's not exactly easy.
And there's a lot of the government forces out there, or the individuals who control the government, are more than happy to have that happen, so that people are kept poor, kept ignorant, kept, doubting, kept hating each other. I mean, the whole divide and rule concept that I became very familiar with in Ireland is operating here as well, where there's so many factions and so many subcultures and so many subgroups and so many feuds, just beneath the surface. But it all boils down to the old Freudian and Jungian concept, is that the psychic unrest in people will create tyrants. that will rule over us, and we will feel that we need these individuals to clean up the mess that we're actually personally responsible for. And the only way to change that for the better is to do your psychic homework where you are evolving within, and you don't need to resort to, the all-father figure. This is what happens in a traumatic situation, and its consequences are terrible. We can see that when we look at history.
At what age, Michael, did this hit you when you were in Ireland?
About 13. I mean, I've always come from a metaphysical background from my mother, who was from India, so we always were brought up with an alternative look, and the spirit of rebellion, of course, in the Irish is incredibly strong anyway, so you mix the mystical background with the rebellious background from Ireland, and you get a really strange mix right there. So I've always been questioning. And in Ireland context, I mean, you don't really have much choice. You see, over there, if you're young, it's almost inevitable that you're going to get caught up in some of the sectarian or paramilitary, type lifestyle if you're not careful, and it's so easy to do. But I got involved in the other island, the island which I refer to as a cathedral without walls, which is the ancient island, the island that's right in front of people and they really couldn't care too much about, which is the Celtic tradition. You'd be amazed, but a lot of people over there really don't care at all about their Celtic roots. They're so caught up in modern history and the struggle for freedom, and that they really forget about the culture that was many, many thousands of years before that. And in fact, I found that in America, there's more people here who know about their Celtic ancestry, the much more ancient, civilizations, than there are people in Ireland who have been taught through Christianity to not care about that.
Was there any particular instant that you thought, oh my gosh, I need to do this? It's a slow process. The material that's in the Atlantis book started to first come through when I was about 13. Oh my gosh.
And
wow.
I basically, I'm very right brain, so that sounds strange to people that, I could get it so young. But see, we were brought up to be very right brain, and therefore you can sort of receive things in a much more imagistic way. And so I received pretty much every single thing that's in the Atlantis book visually, or what you might want to call, sort of intuitively, just by living in Ireland and seeing things there from a right brain point of view. Then you got to go in order to communicate it to other people, you're honor bound in a way to do the study and do the homework to present it in a left brain way. But basically, that becomes like you have to present it in words, you have to have your facts, you have to do your research, So that was the longer sort of study of having to read all the source material to prove what I already knew intuitively just by being there.
Now the book is called Atlantis, Alien Visitation and Genetic Manipulation. Is that correct?
That's right.
Wow. So you really have a lot of stuff in there.
Well, it's important work. As I say, this work probably could not have been as well received as it has been now in the previous ages. I think with the advent of the Internet, with the advent of new science, with all of the sort of cryogenics and nanotechnology and cybernetics and, the virtual reality and super weaponry, now is the perfect time for being able to look back to these ancient myths of the world, especially of Celtic Ireland, and say, my goodness, they had all this then. Because when you study Celtic mythology and you read behind the veil of the fairy folk tales and the fairy folklore, you will find that there's mention of super technologies. There's mentions of great global nuclear wars, just like we have in the Mahabharata, you see. Now, of course, in previous times, that wouldn't have made much sense, and it didn't. That's why people just thought it was fairy folk tales. You don't bother with it. It's just nice legends and mythology. But now we can look back and find out, we are rebuilding some of the technology that these ancient legends are talking about. So it's actually very fascinating to people, and I have a very strong response when I do talks relating to this, because individuals can clearly see that some of the weapons and the powers, and the abilities that were had in the past, these look very much like things that we have now, the high technologies, the advanced technology that we have rediscovered today.
That's probably how the pyramids were built.
I'm totally convinced of it. In fact, you see, there's structures in Ireland. I don't know if you know this, but in Ireland there are structures that are older than the pyramid. There's sacred sites that are aligned to the constellations, that are aligned to celestial events, that are actually predate the pyramid. And as we know, Ireland was the oldest culture in Europe. The oldest culture in Europe.
What a way to be initiated to St. Patty's Day today.
Well, right.
Well,
Doing this is
well, Michael, you're going to be at the conference in Santa Clara. I think it's May 24th and 25th. What
Right.
date is no? Is that no? That's the wrong date.
Oh, I think
date.
it's 28th, isn't it? 28th
Yeah,
and
28th,
29th
29th. Uh-huh.
29th and 30th. Yeah, I was looking at the previous one.
of May.
And
Yeah, I'll be there. Lots of great speakers are going to be there. Dick Gregory, the world-famous comedian, will be there doing a talk. It's always fun to go to the conference, you know.
Well, we would love to have you on one more time before the conference if
I'll be
you're
delighted.
available. Yeah, because
Good.
Can I get my contact information for people?
Oh, absolutely.
They can visit my website, which is taroscopes.com. It's Taroscopes. They can phone me for more information at 206-527-2968. And my email, which is also on the website, but it's neter, Neter, @jps.net.
Okay.
And again, the website is Taroscopes, all one word, plural, Taroscopes.com.
Is there a last message you'd like to share with us today at all?
Yeah, and it definitely has to do with the spirit of rebellion. We're not meant to fear it. We're meant to realize that it's our salvation. In many instances when there has been a lot of darkness in the world, or when there's been a lot of confusion, instead of gathering around the central figure, you know, or some sort of tyrannical central figure, which is basically giving our power away, the message that America always embodied was freedom. But behind freedom, the motivating fact behind freedom is the spirit of rebellion. People forget that the two go together, you know. If they watch Braveheart, which is the story of William Wallace, you know, if you think about Crazy Horse, you think about some of the great, you know, even Mahatma Gandhi, you think of any of the movements even in America's history about when great things were done. Yes, the goal was freedom, but the means to the goal was a spirit of rebellion against authority and against this idea to control, you know, to make one neck out of everybody for one leash. This is not the way of America. America was about independence, and just 200 years ago we were able to deal with tyranny, and we have to understand that this so-called war on terrorism is really a war on terror, and that is a psychological term.
it's a war on taking our freedoms away if we don't watch it.
Right, and terror, see, they tell you, they're telling you in plain sight that it's not terrorism, it's terror. Well, look up the word terror. The word terror implies a psychological state. It's the terror within. It's the terror of life. It's the terror of growth. It's the terror we have inside of ourselves that we're manifesting these kinds of cabals outside of ourselves. And they take many forms and many shapes. And, of course, they look attractive in the beginning. But, as you say, they take away our rights. They divorce us from our greater strength. And that's what's going on now. And the governments and religions of the world have been taken over by some of the most, evil, what I would consider outright evil and satanic forces. And the way to countermand that is twofold. You have to deal with your emotional body and cleanse it in the way that the shamans and the way of the masters of old used to teach us how to do. And we also have to collaborate. And we have to turn to the divination arts and some of the great secrets that were left for us in the past. And we also have to educate ourselves to really find out, what's going on and empower ourselves. And make sure that we stay on top of that, because that's what our forefathers did for us, and we owe it to the children of the future to do the same.
Well, those are great parting words.
Well, it's interesting. You're in the media today, and that's all you hear. Expect terror to happen here. Expect terror to... they're implementing this as they're speaking.
Well, it's a diet. It's literally a diet that has to be drip-fed to you every single day. Because, see, it doesn't work if you just give it once or twice. People have common sense, and their common sense will tell them to not, focus on that. And ordinary people know how to live. I'm always convinced, I'm very optimistic about the power of the human being and their ability to resist. I've seen that. But you see, now what we have is through the TV and through these articles, there's a constant drip feed lasting year after year after year, a constant diet. So people ingest it. People end up digesting this. So it infects you. It infects your psyche over time. There's a lot of subliminal, persuasion that's going into this.
And then we create it because we believe it.
Agreed. And remember, again, it's something in us that also needs to be attracted to this. But as we saw during the Vietnam War, there was a lot of spirit of rebellion, and that has carried further than all the tyrannies that happened around that time. The idea of the spirit of rebellion has what has lasted. And Uranus is our messenger right now. The spirit of Uranus, the spirit of Aquarius, and the spirit of Pluto is showing us the way. Uranus is saying, be rebels. Don't be afraid to, break the status quo and go your own way. And Pluto is definitely saying, take care of your psyche. Take care of your inner being. Clean it out. Find a way to find out who you really are inside deeply. Deal with your unconscious repressions and so on. Because if you're clean inside like that, then, you're not going to be able to be infected by any of these media viruses that are outside. And then you'll be strong and healthy enough to even assist other people who may be in need. It's a very important set of rituals. And we're going to learn. This is the age for learning some of these most important things that we've kind of let go in previous decades. We're going to be learning them now, though.
Well, it's so I have a few more minutes here, and so you're looking at maybe your book. Does it bring up areas that people get to learn from? To be able to experience for themselves areas where they can be able to maybe touch and to be able to feel, so they can get more in tune with themselves?
Yeah, it does. I'm a person who focuses very greatly on solutions, because remember, even though this book has a lot to do with ancient times, I'm not that interested in ancient times. I'm personally very interested in what's going on now, in our present day and age. But, as Jordan Maxwell and other people have shown, what is going on now in our modern age has its roots in the ancient past. So one has to draw pictures, one has to show individuals in this world how we get into the place that we are right now, because it's in understanding the ancient times, before the Industrial Revolution, you see, who's been doing what to whom. Then, the solutions are impacted in this moment now. So yes, in everything that I do, in all the work that I do, whether it's with the tarot or astrology, or whether it has to do with Atlantis or working with children, it's very important to bring solutions into the picture. And these solutions are also very grassroots. Don't forget that the planet Uranus and the spirit of rebellion and the whole concept of solutions is not something very advanced. You don't need a PhD, you see, to be able to know how to solve what appears to be very complex problems. What we're going to discover as these years pass by is that the solutions are extremely simple. These are very grassroots. It's all on a grassroots level that we're going to be able to solve what appears to be huge problems, because again, this is this whole shadow play of these government forces wanting us to imagine that there's just all sorts of horror out there, and we're in a paranoid society where everything we eat and drink is wrong for us, and that there's all sorts of enemies just crouching outside the door, It's like the old, Wizard of Oz. Behind the mask, there's a huge shadow is cast, but there's nothing back of it whatsoever. We saw that, for instance, in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, when Professor Tolkien's Lord of the Rings was recently released in movie form. What is the whole message of that movie? They even said in the movie that the Hobbit, is the smallest of persons can make the biggest of changes. The whole idea of that film is that the most littlest of a person can actually do, if he has the guts to do it, what whole armies cannot do. Yeah. But what is Frodo's job? What is the job of the hero in Lord of the Rings? He has to go into the dark land. You see, there's that whole Plutonic idea.
Okay, Michael, I guess...
you have to go into the dark part of the self. That is the answer, the underworld.
We are close to changing positions here. So
let everybody know who we were talking to.
Oh, yes.
It's Michael Tsarion. It's Tsarion.
And his website is www.taroscopes.com. That's taroscopes.com. And please check out his website and check out his new book. Michael, thank you. It's always such a exciting pleasure to have you with us.
Oh, it's always a great pleasure. Both of you keep up the good work, and hope to talk with you again, and hope to see you at ConspiracyCon. Tell your audience to definitely come on down to ConspiracyCon and see us all and check out the new information that we'll share with you.
Okay.
Yeah, there's always a lot to learn.
Very much.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Thanks, guys. Keep up the good work.
Thank
you. You too. Bye-bye.
And this is Embracing Mother Earth with Taz Powers
and Paula Nance.